Your YouTube feed is crap. Stop wasting your time watching bot-boosted shills and self-appointed gurus cloying for your attention. Instead, join the Goslings interview live stream and podcast. The Goslings, a dark-lit digital speakeasy of free thinkers. A super chat of radical truth-seeking wizards who eat trolls for second breakfast. Topics that'll make your mama's hair stand on end. Ideas that'll make your pastor's knees knock. Guests that will illuminate the hidden chambers of your mind. And interviews that strike down the darkness. Welcome to the Goslings.
Greetings, you wonderful warriors of the broken sword. I am Jonathan.
I am Nick.
And we are the Goslings, a digital speakeasy of free thinkers and entrepreneurs, interesting people, authors, writers, whatever we want it to be.
Speak for yourself.
And tonight we are kicking it old school, baby. Not just by going live with a midweek stream. That's going to be a lot of fun. But also we are going to be reaching back into hallowed antiquity with our intro that we just ran a second ago.
Trying to turn it off.
I know.
And it just goes. That's what you get for trying to do it live.
We're doing it live.
Do it live.
Yeah. So, you want to dive right in?
Yeah, man, let's do it. Of
right,
course, we
cool.
always kick things off with our toast, so hope you join us.
Yep.
If you're watching this right now, you've probably done this with us before.
Yes.
It is a Thursday night. We're a little off the beaten trail.
Yes.
So you know what to do.
Yes.
Grab your drinking vessels. And I don't remember who led last time.
Why don't you lead this time?
I'll be happy to. Here we go. Take up the broken sword of your father.
And strike down the darkness. Cheers.
I'm so vain when I hold up our Goslings mugs. I always try to turn it so you can see the logo as I'm doing the toast.
My fidget spinner is the coffee mug during the interviews and everything we do. I'm constantly like angling either the mug, our mug, or the Kothon mug in so that it's visible in the camera. It's my fidget spinner.
Gotta watch that.
Yeah. Speaking of coffee mugs, why don't we jump right into this if you want to?
Let's do that. Oh, real quick. Kothon Spartan mug. Real quick. If you haven't subscribed and you're watching this, we'd really appreciate it. It'd help us out a whole lot. If you wouldn't mind, take up the broken sword of your finger. Strike down that subscribe button. Smack the bell.
Yep. Smack it like it owes you money. Yep.
Indeed.
Keep your YouTube pimp hand strong.
That's right. And if you've already pimp smacked the bell, we'd also if you've already done that, hit the like button. That also helps tremendously. You could share the video. That's great too. Whatever just click something.
Yeah.
And it'd help a lot. We'd really appreciate it. All right. Without further ado, let's talk about our Kothon Spartan mug. These are the Kothon Spartan mugs. These are handcrafted by Master Potter Joel Cherico at ChericoPottery.com. These are replicas of what the Spartans themselves drank out of, called the Kothon. He made and designed these in collaboration with the great Stephen Pressfield, author of Gates of Fire, Legend of Bag of Ants,
and friend of the channel.
And friend of the channel, been on multiple times.
Yeah. If you're looking for some great interviews about writing, check out our back catalog with Stephen Pressfield. We do quarterly interviews with him. So
he's fantastic. If you're a writer, an artist, and you want to be more proficient in the way,
this is the way.
Definitely want to check out Stephen Pressfield's book, especially The War of Art.
Yeah, the War of Art is pinnacle. It's like the mere Christianity of writing.
This is the way.
This is the way. Yes.
And so go to Joel Cherico's site at ChericoPottery.com.
Mm-hmm.
Check out the Kothon Spartan mug. Drink like a man.
Yes.
Get a Kothon.
And if you want to look like a man, then you can go to JardaniJovanovic.com. Jardani Jovanovic hair and skincare products made by real men for real men. Or as I like to say, be as sexy as you are deadly. Awaken your inner John Wick. Give 007 a run for his money. Or as Nick likes to say,
gentlemen, give your better half a reason to doubt that.
I'm so jealous that I didn't come up with that. Giordani Jovanovic hair and skincare products for men. Mike Fisher is the owner and proprietor of Giordani Jovanovic, and he is a dear friend of the channel, big supporter, and we like to show our gratitude for him whenever we can. So
Absolutely.
buy some beard oil or some hair gel or some shampoo or lotion for the good men in your life.
That's right.
Not the nice guys, but the good men.
That's right.
So
The good men.
yes,
I like that. Well, without further ado, let's get into tonight's topic and bring on tonight's guest. You want to introduce him?
I do. Yes, author of the Canon Film Guide, genius historian of all things Canon films. We have interviewed him before. We're having him back. Who has the power? Austin Trunick has the power, and we are going to be talking Masters of the Universe.
Good evening, Austin. How are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me on, gentlemen.
Absolutely. Hey, before we get started, we were talking about it earlier. Tell everybody about your awesome background that you have there, Austin.
So these are all lunch pails from the 60s through 80s. These are all the metal ones, which I think they made until about the Rambo lunchbox was the last one they made in like 85 or 86. But when I was a kid, my parents we'd buy these at garage sales and flea markets for, the 25 cents, 50 cents. And I would keep my toys in them, like Legos and G.I. Joes for the most part. And we'd hang them up on the ceiling. And that was where they kept my stuff off the floor. I wish I had such an easy solution for my own children, but I don't. But yeah, now that I'm a grown up, or mostly I like to think I am, I have them all on shelves in my office.
I got to ask, of all of those that I can see, what is your favorite one?
I don't know if
you could part with the very last. If you could be on the desert island, you could only have one of your lunch pails.
Gosh, I'm looking around back here. I actually don't think you can see it right now because it's over on that side of the room. But I have a Transformers lunchbox, which is what I actually carried to school. So like that's nostalgically, like that's
near and dear.
The rest of these were toys it's toy storage.
Yeah.
The Transformers one actually carried peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and bananas and things like that for me.
Yeah, you were telling us that your dad would put little nails or hooks in the rafters for all the boxes. You'd put your toys in there. You'd hang your toys on these nails in the lunch boxes. I thought that was a good idea.
I grew up in an old house, so the ceilings were low and we had the exposed rafters and beams. So yeah, he would stick a hammer in them and you could hang them up by these, the plastic candles, and you'd have your toys hanging everywhere.
Cool. Which one is that?
Oh, that's Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I don't have any memory of this. It's I think a TV movie, maybe.
Okay.
But it was popular enough that some kids carried a lunchbox to school.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I had one, but I can't remember what it was, to save the life of me. I remember having a metal lunchbox, but I can't remember what it was.
We were talking earlier about I had mentioned the Empire Strikes Back when I was a little kid. I saw somebody on a field trip at the Adventure Science Museum with an Empire Strikes Back lunchbox, and then Austin reaches over and picks up the very one that that is like
didn't
burned
have to look like this, did it?
Yeah. That's the one.
That is awesome.
I mean, that's awesome. Yeah. So that's a lot better of a plan for toy storage, by the way, than mine. My idea when I was a little kid was to take all of my vintage Star Wars toys, like the vehicles, and tie wires around them, like fishing wire, and then tack them to my ceiling so that they were like the X-wing was chasing the TIE fighter.
So cool.
And it would stay for a little while, and then invariably So,
what about people in the chat? People in the chat that are watching right now.
Oh,
that's awesome! It's
we used to drink out of these, which is pretty gross because
I had those.
I mean, I didn't have a dishwasher growing up. Like that's the thing, and
I only remember the smell of the milk that had been there for 3 days too long.
There's no way that these things were sanitary. Like
no
way.
No.
I'm sure there are health issues that we're dealing with now that are thanks to these.
They either gave you.
Yeah, it's called a strong immune system.
Yeah, they either gave you mesothelioma or they gave you the best immune system for the apocalypse. That's
right.
inevitable.
That's right.
So that is awesome.
I'd be interested to know if anyone's in the chat and you had a
and you had a lunchbox.
Yeah.
Which one
What
did you have?
Yeah.
Put it in the chat. Think about it. Reminisce while we talk.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to know. That'd be interesting. And I'm trying to remember mine. I just, it's not coming to me right now.
Yeah.
It wasn't Dukes of Hazzard. Oh, Knight Rider. That's what it was.
Knight Rider.
I had a Knight Rider lunchbox. I remember it had a car on it and had a red border. It was like
Oh,
black.
Oh,
It had a
yeah,
car with a
okay.
red border or something like that.
I know there's like an 80% chance Austin has it.
Probably.
I'm actually looking for some of these. I'm going to disappear from camera for a second. but-
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it. Go for it. We got some chats coming in. Melissa Rice says, Hobby Lobby lunchbox and thermos. A Holly Hobby. I said Hobby Lobby. Oh my gosh. Holly Hobby lunchbox and thermos. That's very cool.
Nice.
Gabe Bello. Gabe had a Dukes of Hazzard metal lunchbox. Very cool.
There's our Knight Rider.
There it is. There it is. You made my childhood dream come true by showing this.
That's prime
That's
David
it.
Hasselhoff there.
Dude, yes. That's amazing.
You know what's funny?
Where did you find? Is it? How long have you had that? I mean, where did you find
10,
that?
30 years, 30 plus years. These were things that we would grab at garage sales. My parents would pick them up, and it was
Ah,
what they would buy for me to put toys in.
that's so cool.
I'm extremely lucky there.
There? Hey,
Dukes of
Gabe,
Hazzard,
there's your
friend.
Dukes of Hazzard. Gabe, there you go, man.
Yeah, there it
Dukes
is.
of Hazzard. Look at that.
Yeah.
How fun, man. You gotta love just collecting this stuff. Where do you go now
fun.
to find some of this old? Do you ever go hunting ever?
I go to a lot of flea markets. I mean, that's still something I love to
Yep.
do, but it's tough to find ones that I don't have.
Yeah.
Most of mine are from the 70s and 80s, so like those are more common. And then the ones I don't have are your 50s and 60s stuff that I'm not as attached to because I don't remember these shows,
Mhm.
Sure.
and they tend to be more expensive because they're older. So most of these, my collection probably peaked probably around 2000. and then it became stuff that I couldn't find or was too expensive or I didn't have the attachment to. I wasn't as excited to spend money on those types of things.
Sure. That's understandable.
You know, it's funny too. Like Nick and I, we would go to Toys R Us, obviously, but our dad would also take us to comic book shops because they had vintage Star Wars figures.
Yeah.
And anytime I go to a flea market now, I get that gentle waft of mildew, and I automatically like. Do you ever have like the sense of nostalgia wash over you whenever you're like in a flea market and you have that musty sort of smell
Mhm.
come back? You're like, oh, you're like, there's a lunchbox around
Especially comic book shops, like
Yeah.
that old like paper has a scent to it
Yeah.
that you can
Mhm.
recognize right away, especially if it's in a tiny like place that it's enclosed and the air doesn't circulate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
think
good stuff.
when we last had you on, it was actually on my birthday, and I had gone, and just to make sure everyone is bored again as I talk about this, is like they were last time. I had gone antiquing all day, but what I love about it is that smell of the old books when you open them up, and the smell just jumps out at you. It's like kind of sharp.
It was on
kind
your
of a
birthday, wasn't
musty
it?
Smell. Yeah. It's
And you know,
fun.
the irony is we're doing this on our eldest brother's birthday.
That's right.
Oh,
Today is
Yeah. So
well,
shout out to BJ.
Yeah, happy birthday, Beach.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
How old is BJ? 57, 58, 60?
Oh, he's
75?
52. He's 52, I think.
52.
Yeah, 52.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
And we don't need to talk about him.
Not a
we invited him on
remarkable
the
birthday.
show, and he said no. So
yeah.
happy
Well,
birthday.
you know, we'll see.
He's
we'll
missing out, man. He's missing out. Maybe he's
Mhm.
watching live right now. If he is, I love you, bro.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
So,
Let's get into
Yes.
the topic. Let's get into Masters of the Universe. Okay, so I got to tell you, when we decided on talking about Masters of the Universe, we talked about canon films last time you were on, and we there were a number of different movies that we kind of went over,
yeah, we did a 30,000-foot view. Of
Yeah.
canon films.
and we had your volume 1,
Mhm.
and in there we had like American Ninja.
Mhm.
We talked about a lot of ninja movies. I remember that.
Yeah.
But I remember the conversation briefly touched on Masters of the Universe. And of course, we've been emailing about it. We're like, let's just do a whole Masters of the Universe episode.
Mhm.
I saw it, I think, in the theater once.
Mhm.
And then again on Tuesday. So I'm all caught up. So
Yeah.
I'm ready for this conversation, I think.
Fresh eyes.
Yeah.
I, however, Austin, watched it ad nauseum growing up
Mhm.
because I was not a fan. I was not like into He-Man but
Mhm.
Masters of the Universe is like Krull meets Star Wars. It's kind of got a lot of Star Wars vibe to it.
Mhm.
So I was like in love with Masters of the Universe, but rewatching it as an adult, I was telling Nick earlier, like it's not as much of a guilty pleasure as I remember it. Like it's got some decent moments in it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It was a guilty pleasure on Tuesday because I really, I did enjoy it. But I was prepared. I was prepared. I'm like, look,
Mhm.
it's gonna be a Canon film, right? It's gonna be low budget. It's gonna be,
Mhm.
it's gonna be absolutely ridiculous in places. I'm not gonna like try to grade the plot. I'm just gonna enjoy the action and the tropes and the cheese. I was not disappointed. I enjoyed it.
Where does Masters rank for you, Austin, in the canon film lexicon?
So last time we talked, I had got into a lot of my experience with canon. A lot of these movies, my first exposure to them was going into the video stores and renting them with my father.
Yes.
And it was at an age where, my dad would rent the movies and he'd choose the movies. So that's where I saw Chuck Norris movies. I saw Charles Bronson movies way too young. But I would be renting cartoons. I'd be renting the family home entertainment, like Transformers tapes. That was my age. But
Yeah.
Master Universe was something that I remember being excited about. I remember seeing commercials. I knew the cartoon and things like that. I was young enough to still be pumped about seeing a live action He-Man. I remember this coming into the store, and so I remember going in and I don't know what my dad rented. It was his usual action movie that I would watch with him and we would enjoy together. But I remember finally getting excited. It was one of the first tapes that I was excited to actually be in the store and see it. And so it holds a special a spot in my heart in that way. I remember my reaction. I think my reaction to the movie is very much the same as so many people who were He-Man fans of the cartoon, the Master Universe cartoon, and went to see the film. And they're wondering where Battle Cat is, where Orko is. This is not the He-Man cartoon.
Yeah.
It's not the live version of the He-Man cartoon. It's
Right.
something that's
Battle Cat, of course. Where was Battle Cat? I didn't even think about that.
Cringer.
Not on a canon budget. That's the long and short of it. But
yeah.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Mhm.
If it hadn't been on a Canon budget, who would have played He-Man? Who do you think they would have gone for? Schwarzenegger?
I think I mean, in my view of it, in my perspective, it's still Dolph. Dolph was attached before it even came to canon, so Mattel had chosen him as their. So he was part of the package before they took it to studios. So when Canon and Warner Brothers and I think it might have been MGM maybe were all bidding for the rights to make He-Man, Dolph was already He-Man. He was already the main character. So that was someone that Mattel had a lot of control over this. This was very, very much their baby with the producer Ed Pressman. And the package they put together was based on scripts they approved, actors they approved, and things like that. And
there was a script.
I mean,
vaguely,
yeah. I mean,
tell us about that because Mattel did have some stipulations for the movie for the producers as far as like what had to be seen or what like couldn't. He-Man couldn't do certain things. Can you talk about that, Austin?
Yeah. So a lot of people. This came at a time. This was when it started coming together as a movie, as a live action movie. It was not a time when, like now, we're looking at a Barbie movie in a few months down the road. We've had Battleship movies. We've had 15 Transformers movies. Like movies based on toy lines are what we're used to today.
Yeah.
Back then, nobody would take it seriously. No studios wanted to do this. This was pretty revolutionary for Mattel to want to make a live action movie. They were doing it backwards. He-Man started because the figures because they didn't have a Star Wars. They had turned down George Lucas, and
that's right.
They did not get the Kenner get it because Mattel said no to make these figures. So they didn't think boys wanted to buy action figures, which is just funny. Hasbro had G.I. Joe.
Wow.
Kenner had the Star Wars figures.
Yeah.
Mattel needed something, so they developed Master Universe in the house, He-Man. It was something that started as a toy, became a cartoon, became a comic book, and they wanted to get to the Star Wars level. So their idea was like, let's do it backwards. Let's not have the movie like Star Wars did and make the toys out of that. Let's have the toys and make a movie out of that, a live action film.
Okay.
Mhm.
So this was a project that came together over years and years. They had recruited Ed Pressman, who just recently passed away since last time I talked to you guys, and now, so just in the last couple months. But he had produced the Conan the Barbarian movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had produced so many Nicholas Roeg's films, just fantastic, wide variety of movies. But he had been recruited by Mattel to try to put this together. So this came together beginning in 1984. So this movie came out in 87. It was a long span of time. They were pitching it around. It was written by David Odell, who is best known for, he wrote for the Muppet Show. He worked on all the Jim Henson stuff, but the thing he was most famous for was writing The Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that was his calling card at that point. And so he wrote this script really trying to take what was, again, uncommon at that time, turning a toy line, a cartoon, into something that adults would also want to see in theory. And it was tough. They had anything set in the cartoon universe when you're sort of backwards, reverse engineering a high concept science fiction project like that. Anything you write is going to be expensive. Anything you describe from the cartoon is going to be extremely expensive.
Yeah.
So certain ideas they had early on was to set it on Earth. That was something that happened from the very beginning. They couldn't set it in space in Eternia like all of the cartoons were. They couldn't have certain characters. They could, like, Orko was going to be expensive to do. Battle Cat would have been expensive to do. So they wrote a lot of these out, and this was an idea that was, again, like, you have something like Star Wars where you put your money on the screen and then you take the toys out of it. They were trying to make something that was already very fantastical, very science fiction, sword and sorcery, sword and sandal, whatever you want to call it, all of these things mashed up, and trying to pull them out of that and to put it in a live action, but also do it inexpensively, which was not
it's tough,
not impossible. So this was a project they pitched around for a long time. It was the sort of the central idea of like the He-Man having to come to Earth and battle somewhere in California was always part of it for years and years and years. But when they came together, they started pitching the project. They had Dolph involved. This was Dolph right after Rocky, right after his Bond movie he was in. And that was all he'd done, but he looked like He-Man. They liked him because he looked like He-Man.
Thankfully, he didn't have that haircut. You know?
Yes, the little Dutch boy bowl cut.
The Prince Valium haircut.
Yeah.
The bang.
Yeah, this is a movie that they're like, this is what we want to do. We have director, we have the actor, we have the script, we have all these designs. Let's take it to studios. And most of the studios shot them down. There were bids from 3 studios. And I know, again, I'm sorry, I don't remember the third one right off, but it was Warner Brothers and Canon, and were the 2 leading ones. And Warner Brothers was $14 million, and Canon bid $16.5 million. And this was a script that they'd earmarked for about $24 to $25 million. And so they took what they could get. They already knew that they couldn't do what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately,
what did they do with the money?
Dolph Lundgren's hair.
Yeah, the spray and
the feathered, mullet.
They paid Bill Conti to do the music with all 16 million.
Whoever had the
music was awesome.
Whoever had the spritz bottle to spray down poor Frank Langella when he was like sweating under his prosthetics.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed in rewatching the movie, it's been many, many years since I've, of course. But I noticed that like the script, the script for the movie, at least starting out, like the first act, is actually like kind of a cool concept in the world of Eternia and He-Man. Like it starts out, it's really good writing in a weird way. I mean, obviously it's very uneven and it's cheesy. It's got some, awful moments and some stuff that whatever. But like the movie starts out with Skeletor winning, and
Yep.
like the sorceress is captured, He-Man is part of the resistance, and like all the guys in it, they got into the city. There's like this whole world that's already built, obviously from the cartoon. And I was just kind of impressed with how the script actually handles how do you make a He-Man movie, because you have this
Right.
it's sort of like Transformers. You have this thing where people are just battling all the time, and you never want to change that formula because that's what sells lunch boxes.
Yeah.
But they did something like kind of cool. Like it had more merit than I thought, going into it again. And but it is so tough because you can't have Cringer or Battle Cat. You can't have Orko.
I don't remember Cringer from the cartoon.
Well, it was I think wasn't Cringer the version of Battle Cat, sort of like the tame normal version before he like
Yeah, I think they're more like
transformed?
Meek. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Okay.
it was like Prince
Before
Valiant,
he has the power.
or Prince Adam's
Yeah.
pet. I
Yeah,
think,
okay,
if
yeah.
I remember correctly. Gable correct me if I'm wrong about anything in here. Gabe is a huge Masters of the Universe fan. You
Oh,
two
wow.
actually would have a blast. You could probably talk
I've
for 3
I've been
hours.
watching it. I've been watching him go by in the comments on the side here, and
Yeah.
I wanna
Gabe,
respond.
he's very up on all cool things social media.
Yeah, this is it is a movie, and again, like I am impressed by the world building. Like even if that wasn't translated very well to the screen in a lot of aspects, like David Odell, whether you like or dislike The Dark Crystal, I think it's a movie that does a very good job of efficiently introducing a world. They were able to turn that into a Netflix or Disney Plus series or something recently that was more expanded. But he was the one who, I mean, he was sat down with Jim Henson's puppets and brought them to the screen, made stories for them, which is a feat. And I think he did a pretty good job here. Like all the stuff you pointed out, just trying to make a world that was compelling to not just the children who'd seen the cartoon and coming to see the movie and obviously buying the action figures and sell more action figures, but the parents that were taking them, or the people who had to tag along with them, the older brothers or the older siblings or whoever had to get into the theater beyond just the base cartoon fans, which would have been the main audience at this time.
Yeah. Is that why they incorporated Courtney Cox's character and whatever his name is, the little, they're high school, but like clearly they're like 22,
Right.
Yeah. Like, is that kind of why they did that?
Yeah, her boyfriend was a great character, I thought.
Yeah.
I thought he was cool. He's just a regular guy. Like,
yeah.
where are the normal dudes? Well, go back to the 80s and watch Masters of the Universe. And that's like what normal dudes were like.
Yeah.
And I think they were sort of the people who were the help everyone else into the story. If you didn't know the grand story of He-Man and Skeletor and their history and things like that, you could get in through Julie and Kevin, I think their names were.
That's right. Yes,
Yeah.
Julie and Kevin. Thank you. Yeah, that must. What's funny though, Austin? They do that in movies, but truly, I mean, I was 4 years old when this movie came out. I probably saw it when I was 5 on video or something. And it was the same thing with Dune, which is another one that we can never have an episode without me mentioning. And Gabe also loves. Yeah, this is the way. Yeah. But like both of those movies, I went into knowing nothing about the world. And really, I wish more studios would like give their audience credit and just not do an origin story, not have, a point of view character for the uninitiated. Because we are initiated, and but just like throw you in, and it actually like kind of works when you just throw somebody right into it. And but still, it's it's the 80s. And what's so funny about like the whole Earth side of things is not only are they running around on empty streets the whole time, but it kind of feels like Back to the Future a little bit. You know what I mean? Like there's like this modern day suburbia that's being infiltrated by all these weird floating techno magic techno things.
It's not just James Tolkien's part of this movie. There's more Back to the Future correlation between
I
these.
was so
Oh my gosh, that's
surprised
right,
when I
yeah.
saw
Yeah.
James Tolkien
And he's
in
so
Masters
good.
of the Universe. It's
like
like
the
this
quintessential.
movie might be okay.
Yeah,
This
the
movie might be
quintessential
saved.
80s authority figure. Like if you needed
Yeah.
somebody to
Yeah.
that
We had
like
Top
teens
Gun,
would
he was in
like
Top-
shut
he
up
was in
and
Top
listen
Gun,
to
right?
in the 80s, you needed
Uh-huh.
James Tolkien in your movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he was in everything.
And
He
he's
was in Back
actually
to
a
the
pretty
Future.
good character.
Principal
Strickland.
Strickland. Principal
Mhm.
Strickland.
Yes, Principal
And who
Strickland.
was he in Top Gun? He was like one
That I don't
of
remember.
the.
I
He's
mean,
one of the-
lieutenant or commander or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the
Yeah.
CAG
Oh,
guys.
I love this guy. He's always bald. It's the same guy. It's the same character.
Yeah. Yeah.
He says everything the same way. I love it. Just he makes me feel safe.
And he's yeah.
But I'm
he's
safe in this watching this movie. Now.
his
I have
character
my bearings.
like he's a good detective. I noticed like in the movie they actually
Yeah.
I don't know, Austin, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it actually seems like somebody tried to do something with the script as far as like the characters and the dialogue.
Yeah.
Like it didn't seem like just the most lazy paint by numbers
No.
Disney-esque
Well,
kid film.
During the action, it was, but when it wasn't action, the writing was actually pretty good
Yeah.
in the slower scenes.
Do you know, Austin, if they
Again,
actually tried?
I have a lot of respect for David Odell, the Dark Crystal fellow,
Yeah.
as being able to sort of having to translate this. It's not an easy job, I don't think. But I mean, he was the only person responsible for the world building. There were other people that had to try to take these toys and these cartoon characters and put them into a more real life situation. One of the people that I have a lot of respect for is Bill Stout, who was the production designer on this movie. He designed a lot of the costumes and weapons and things like that. Before this, he had worked on Raiders of the Lost Ark. He had done production design on the Conan the Barbarian movies.
I knew it.
He did.
I could see that in Masters of the Universe.
He's very famous for his dinosaur drawings and trying to basically make dinosaurs look more like just looking at bones and like what dinosaurs would have looked like and things like that. And Jurassic Park was something that was very heavily based on, even though he wasn't involved in that production, they were based on sort of his interpretation of drawing what dinosaurs would look like based on what. So he's somebody who worked a lot. And the other person was Mobius, for any comic fans out there who are French comic book artist who had worked on Blade Runner and Tron. And some of the things they tackled were trying to take He-Man's costume from the cartoons or the toys. I remember I'm like thinking back to the action figure more than the cartoon, where it's just really like a loincloth. And part of what Mobius brought to it, working with Bill Stout, was to take a costume, and the He-Man in this movie, his armor is kind of like he has that plate and the belts, and I mean it's silly looking, but it's still built from something that the idea was that these were all pieces of armor. Like he was part of this resistance against Skeletor. They didn't have money to fund an army, so all of the armor and things that they wore were things that they pillaged from the battlefield, like stuff from enemies. So like the designs, if you punch in Mobius He-Man or Bill Stout He-Man, you can look at these designs online. They're amazing.
That's cool.
Because they are these kind of like battle torn, mismatched pieces of armor where like he's got a gauntlet on his arm that doesn't match and the breastplate that doesn't match, and but it's something that's in that case Mattel nixed a lot of stuff. Mattel wanted something they didn't look too far from the toys. The whole history of this movie is a push and pull from people trying to do something that would make this toy line translate into the real world and appeal to more people besides just people who want the cartoon, and Mattel pushing more and more to make a movie that would appease the kids. And it's just again, they never met on an even ground. That
it doesn't quite mesh.
Right. I enjoy this movie. Again, as an adult, I appreciate the world building. As a kid, I was disappointed that it wasn't the cartoon that I saw.
Sure.
So I can kind of see both ways. And
Yeah.
again, if you stepping back into a distance, I think it kind of never hit that sort of part on the balance beam where it would have leveled out and been a much.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
Gabe commenting on the costume, going back to that to the costumes of specifically He-Man. He says trying to recreate his armor. They did a good job there. Cape edition was very nice, and because He-Man's cape is red in the movie. He doesn't have one in the cartoon. He doesn't have a cape at all. And I'm trying to envision what it would have been like if He-Man did not have a cape in the movie. And so much of the movie is here set in Earth at night, and it would have been really. He would have kind of blended in a lot. You wouldn't have been a lot of contrast.
Well, he looks really cool with the sword of Grayskull and the NES blaster, and the cape.
There was one they should have done a retake on though, because there was like this scene where they all rush back into the music store through the back door, and He-Man's holding the door open for them, and it kind of falls down behind him and hits him on the back of the head, and then he pushes it back and goes in. But when he goes in, his sword like slips off his cape.
Oh, really?
Accidentally, he doesn't quite get it. He's like doing this awkward little thing to get it back on. Like, he should have redone, like the stormtrooper that hits his head in Star Wars. You're like, ooh, they should have caught that.
That's the juice of battle.
That's the juice.
You kidding me?
It is. Well, you want to talk about the juice? Okay, so when Skeletor sends the 4
mercenaries,
bounty hunters, mercenary guys,
we don't need this scum,
and they're all leaving the throne room. Is it? No. They're already here. The mercenaries are already here. They're at the school.
Oh, yeah.
And they're leaving the school. And all 4 of them are walking through the door. Is it Beast Man? Is that his name?
Is that right?
The Beast Man?
Austin?
Yeah, Beast Man, like, his sword swings forward and gets stuck on the front of him, and it's sticking straight out like it's his dong. And he's walking through the door, and his sword's, like, straight out. I'm like, ooh, it's not good for a kids movie.
Yeah,
I'm like, how about a retake? But I enjoy, like, I always get a kick out of little things like that in movies. Those are the things that I like to look for.
The little goofs.
Yeah.
So they must have had a decent budget at some point for this, Austin, because the makeup is incredible. I mean, all the mercenaries, Skeletor's. I know people dogs, Franklin Gella's makeup in that, but I mean, how else are you supposed to do it? It looks really good. Like, did they have a decent budget for that stuff, or was somebody just a wizard?
No, that's stuff that they did a good job. The money didn't run out till the end, till the end of the shoot. So they did a good job allocating it to make sure that it went to where it needed to go. They skimped a little bit on green screen so that they could spend a few more hours putting Franklin Gella's makeup on.
yeah, that's fair.
Well, the great thing about Franklin Gella is that you don't even notice that. I mean, every one of Skeletor's lines are just awesome. The written, like, he's a proper, like we were talking about the other night. Like, he was like a proper villain.
No, he's like 8 feet tall, first of all.
Yeah, well, he was the character himself. The character itself is just, it's the perfect villain.
Yeah,
for a kid.
Can you talk a little bit about Franklin Gella's involvement in this, Austin?
Yeah, so he was somebody that director Gary Goddard was somebody who came onto this relatively early in the process. I mentioned when Mattel brought him in, and when he came on, part of his thought process was that we have Dolph here. Dolph is a Swedish actor who's spoken 4 lines in the 2 movies. He's like he started between Rocky and the Bond movie. Yeah. And he's got a thick accent. We can't rely on him to really provide the story and the drama and things like that. So they decided they needed to give the heavy lifting and all of the weight of the film to Skeletor. And so Gary Goddard had seen Frank performing in Amadeus on Broadway.
Okay.
He had recently won a Tony for his Dracula on Broadway, and then Amadeus he did the Dracula movie, and then he went to Amadeus on Broadway. And so he approached him not thinking he would get him. He's like, this guy's great. He's a Shakespearean, like, trained actor. He's incredible.
Yeah.
We're not going to get him. But he responded the very, like, as soon as he got the offer that he wanted to do it. And it was, the reason was his kids were He-Man fans.
Yeah.
And I imagine, I mean, I'm not an actor or any sort, but if somebody had come to me and offered me a role in a Paw Patrol movie, my children love that. Like, I would jump on that role to be involved in that in some way. And I'm guessing that was like the 1985 equivalent, or 86, when he was cast.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that was something that he was excited to be involved, because he wanted to impress his kids. And he's an incredible stage actor.
Yeah.
He is just incredible all around.
Yeah.
And he decided to do it. And so he worked with David Odell and Gary Goddard to kind of rewrite the Skeletor stuff, to move most of the exposition from Dolph's plates, whose Dolph is he's an incredibly, he looks the part of He-Man, but he's an incredibly intelligent person. Dolph is a literal rocket scientist, chemical engineer. But he had a thick Swedish accent at the time, which was a problem making this movie. You can't lay all that dialogue on him. So they moved it to Skeletor, and Frank, they talked about it. They talked about different Shakespeare plays and things like that. It was something that the three of them were able to take their influences as Shakespearean, like fans of Shakespeare, and put it into Skeletor, which is just incredible. And Frank, for his his performance, he does not look down on this part at all. It is not beneath him. He goes into Skeletor even with his silly nose, as Gabriel pointed out, and there's like probably 5 pounds of makeup and that gold helmet he wears at the end, which I've been told weighed 20 pounds.
It looks like something from Mardi Gras.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. But underneath all of this, he acted Shakespeare. I mean, he acted Skeletor like he was performing Shakespeare at Stratford or something like that. It's a heck of a performance.
Yeah, it really is. Frank Langella knocks it out of the park, and Gabe was pointing out, that he and Dolph are basically the same height. They're both around 6'5". And so I guess they were looking for, according to Gabe, they were looking for somebody who wouldn't be physically dominated by, the hero. Yeah. And he's imposing. I mean,
yeah, he is.
He looks monster. He's walking, up through the throne room with his sorcerer's staff and just every few steps.
And he's somebody that he was actually one of the actors that was involved with his costume. He showed up. He came early during production, so that, because again, when you're used to playing Dracula on Broadway, when you're playing Richard III or something on stage, what a cape should feel like. So like one of his notes was, you need to make my cape heavier so that like it moves in these different ways. And he's somebody who's just smart enough and talented enough and had enough experience on stage that he could convey that to the costume designers, the people building the Skeletor costume for him, so he could add what he wanted to the performance and the costume. It was a back and forth relationship. So I have nothing but respect for what he did in here, because he brought so much to this movie.
It really did.
Yeah.
How long did it take for him to get into costume and get the makeup on every day?
I don't know the exact amount, like the amount of time, but it was it was not a fun process.
I bet not. Well, because one of the striking things, I guess the Skeletor from the cartoon, doesn't have eyes, but in here you see Frank Langella's eyes, and they didn't put contacts in, they didn't rotoscope him, they didn't pull a Dune on him, and you see his eyeballs move around, and it's got like this horror element to it. It's this obviously very ghoulish, but it's effective. It's very visceral for a child. I was terrified of Skeletor.
Yes, you were.
I remember one time, one of my G.I. Joe vehicles fell down the stairs into the basement, and I just was like, well, it's gone forever. I'm not, because I knew Skeletor lived in the basement, and BJ, our eldest brother, happy birthday, Beej, one summer, we were hanging out at our house at the time had a pool, and it had like a little cabana thing, where you keep all your pool toys and all your old mildewing crap, and he went back there and pretended to beat up Skeletor for me. And so very effective, I guess, is what I'm saying. And then Evil Lynn was my second crush.
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah, speaking of eyes,
yes. Oh my gosh, Meg Foster.
yeah,
I remember her from They Live also, which is truly one of like the coolest movies ever made. But she rocked it in this. Meg Foster was awesome.
she's somebody that they had planned when they designed the costume before they cast the actress, that they had planned to put contacts in to make these sort of like sorceress eyes. But Meg Foster's one of the people that's walking the earth that always has sorceress eyes.
Right.
Like, you look at her and you can't, it's magical.
Yeah.
It's some sort of something going on in there.
Yeah.
Those blue eyes. So that was an incredible, fortunate piece of casting.
Yeah, saved them $400.
Yeah, and an extra 20 minutes on makeup each morning.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
And she looked better. I mean, I don't know. This might be like He-Man blasphemy, I guess, but like, she's a classic example of her character looks better than the cartoon. Like, so many of these people look awesome. Man-at-Arms looks awesome.
Yeah, Man-at-Arms look cool.
And he's got like, I don't know what it must be, just a Winchester or maybe it's an 1890s or 1887. Might be one of those old lever action 10 gauges that like Arnold Schwarzenegger had in Terminator 2. But his rifle, you never see him cock it, but his rifle is a lever action that he runs around with. It's like some mare's leg sawed off kind of thing. And
but you do see James Tolkien rack the shotgun.
Yeah, he racks that shotgun
out.
about 5 times.
Nothing
more than he
comes
should.
out, and then he fires it like 20 times.
Yeah. In the end, he's just cocking it and just hip firing and
it takes
blowing away. I was in Korea.
I was in Korea.
Yeah. That's another one of like the human characters that they're introducing. Was Tolkien always on board, or like what was his involvement in the movie, or was it just like a standard casting thing?
Yeah, that was that. I believe that was just a standard casting. They once they actually had Canon involved. Canon wanted to get it done fast. Mattel was interested in getting it done fast because the toy had featured diminishing returns each year.
Oh yeah,
they wanted to get this. Mattel, I think they had hoped that this movie would come out two years earlier than it did. It took so long. But yeah, a lot of the casting with Tolkien and Courtney Cox and a lot of the human characters beyond Dolph and Frank, like those, like everyone else was sort of cast last minute.
Was Billy Barty as Gwildor sort of an ortho substitute? Were they kind of like trying to do something kind of like?
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Like they needed, and again, like I
Ortho.
look,
See the little floating guy?
Yeah,
the
yeah.
wizard hat?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So again, this was the same writer who wrote Dark Crystal. I see Billy Barty's Gwildor character and Agra, if you remember Dark Crystal, like the really gross little sorceress woman.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Who gives the piece of the crystal to the main character. Like, I think they must be cousins or related in some way. I don't know what planet the Dark Crystal takes place on or how close it is to Eternia, but there's some sort of cross pollination.
Yeah, there's an overlap.
Gwildor and Agra are definitely like second cousins at the most distant.
Yeah, dimensional cousins.
Or like in Never Ending Story, when Atreyu stops at the couple that's right outside the Oracle, the old couple, and they got the weird nose and the ears that look just like Gwildor.
Yeah,
thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
I can't remember their names. You have to forgive me. I'm like, I
So
recognize
the
this
Winch-
makeup.
That had to be a real feather in Weird Al's cap to have Billy Barty in his movie, and probably be really grateful to be there and not be in 80 pounds of makeup, for once. As just the cameraman.
I'm sure Billy Barty was happy to not be laying in a makeup chair for 4 hours every morning on that movie.
So I was talking to Nick about this earlier. There are some obviously very cheesy moments. The woman at arms moment is maybe one of my best, probably one of my favorites, because she looks, Tila, but again, like there's some cool writing in this movie because Lubick is like, your friends are getting wasted out there, and she draws her gun and then she stands at the door and she does that like soldier thing where she waits a second and she composes herself and then she goes out, and then she gets out there and she's like, oh, it looks like you guys needed a girl's touch, and she pops up. No one's hit anybody at this point.
Right, they've been
in the
fighting
music
for
shop.
10 minutes.
Gunfight, in the music store that's like the size of this garage.
Yeah.
And she pops up, and she boom, 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 blows away all the the stormtroopers, and she hops back down, looks right at the camera, and says, "Woman at arms." It's just, there are, and then there's this moment where I don't know if you had to have noticed this. When Evil Lynn tricks Courtney Cox, gets the key, and then calls Skeletor across the trans-dimensional video chat, buried in, I say buried, but it's in the high end of the sound effects of the, of her calling Skeletor.
Yeah.
There is an actual rotary phone ring. Have you ever heard this?
I can't say I've noticed that, but oh my goodness, I want to go listening for it now.
It's so funny. It's like I heard it the first time because rewatched it 2 nights ago. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, and I go and I push it back, rewind it. That's how old we are.
Yeah,
Austin.
yeah, rewind.
And
I still say rewind.
and sure enough, it goes ring. It's so like they clearly kind of had like a sense of self-awareness about this movie, but were they trying, like, did they know how silly it was and they were like steering into that, or is that like the kind of thing that just kind of slipped past under the radar? Like,
I think that to be honest, I think it's a little of both.
Really?
Being the truth, like I think they were aware and they were kind of making something that, I mean, they're making a film out of a toy like that. I think they were aware of that, but I think they imagined they were making something that was closer to Star Wars.
Yeah.
And then what they got. They suffered a lot from the end, from just running out of money, running out of time, and and also just not that the money that would have been spent on effects that I think they imagined would be come at the back end wasn't there. So there are certain things, especially when you get to the stuff that's shot just in the streets of like suburban California, where Skeletor's army's coming in, and Dolph Lundgren's basically strapped to like the bed of a pickup truck in like ski boots, and like they're shooting him from like the ankles up as his like
hoverboard.
Flying machine.
Yeah, it's hoverboard.
And the very shoddy green screen. I think they expected that to be handled a lot better.
The loop-de-loop was
on the
best
back
part.
end, and
He does a full loop-de-loop.
And Kennan's like, we don't have money. Like, it's good enough as it is. Like,
that's always the, that must be kind of the hard part with being, or maybe you become the expert at it with being the Canon Film Guide guru, is that like the line gets so fuzzy, it seems, between like earnest failure and cheesy, like self-aware, silly insert. You know what I mean? Like, is it hard to tell with Canon Films, as an expert on Canon Films, like where they're being like self-referential and where they just like ran out of money and didn't know any better?
It can be in some cases. In other cases, there are people that certain directors, usually you can look at the filmmakers who are working on any particular project we talked a lot about the ninja movies last time, with between American Ninja and Revenge of the Ninja and Ninja 3. Sam Furstenberg was an extremely talented man who knew that he only had $1.5 million to make this ninja movie, and some of it was going to be silly. So he knew to lean into that stuff. And, or, if there's a choice just to make something look cool, like, all you have to do is to make something look cool, no matter how silly it is. And they could lean into that. There were problems when it came to these bigger movies. Masters of the Universe being one. An even better example of a movie gone wrong, I think, is on the same scale as Masters of the Universe, but was much less successful at actually making a watchable film was Superman 4.
Yeah.
And that was a movie where they weren't really able to make the best of their budgetary constraints. They that's a movie where it is a lot of failure. They fell on their face in places where I think there were people who were at least looking at the people working on Master Universe were looking at it more cautiously. I think they kind of prepared to run out of money or prepared to have certain things look silly. For example, I mean, this is Gary Goddard, the director who made Master Universe. His thing was he knew that Dolph's accent was going to be a problem. People were going to have a hard time understanding him, especially when they mixed the music. They didn't have room for a lot of takes. He hoped to redub him, but he knew that if they didn't have money to like shoot the last like 3 days of shooting that they wanted, they weren't going to be able to get Dolph into a studio where he could like very like deliberately say all of his lines and re-record them.
Yeah.
One of his ideas before the movie even started shooting to try to work around Dolph's accent, which they ended up not using, but he almost went to all of the other actors who worked around him, all the Eternian actors. So it would have been Charles Cypher and Chelsea Field, the Eternians. And his idea was to ask them to speak with a Swedish accent.
Wow.
Because he thought it'd be easier for them to do sort of a Swedish chef style, like Swedish accent, and just explain that as being what Eternians sound like in this world.
Okay.
It's kind of brilliant.
I mean, that's a great like reverse engineer way to do it. Yeah.
It would be to him. It was easier to. He thought it like for the because everyone like the 70% of this people watching this movie would be American English speakers who watch the cartoon, or like British. And it would be easier to convince them that like several non-Swedish speakers speaking in a fake Swedish accent were doing a convincing accent than it would be to get Dolph to speak in a convincing English accent that wasn't going to stick out as like a weird sort of obviously different.
That's so
and it's brilliant. And they ended up not doing it, but it's just that's the kind of thinking that went into because they looked and like this is what we've got. How do we make lemonade out of these smashed lemons, overripe lemons we have.
I mean, that is kind of the unorthodox, outside the box genius thinking of a canon film production.
Another example is the set. They didn't have the money to put in a sets. Like most of these are shot in Whittier, California, like this suburb outside of Los Angeles at night. And one of the ideas is that like they have so much money. They have this budget that is spoken for like by effects, by makeup and things like that. But they have a certain amount of money. And part of Gary Goddard, he got together with Bill Stout, the production designer, and David Adell, the writer, and they decided to have one set that was not on Earth. It was an Eternia, and that's the Grayskull throne room.
Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful too.
It's humongous, and it was the largest set built in Los Angeles since I think 1960 or something like that. Since one of the Kubrick times.
Yeah.
But it was built in the same studio where they had shot Gone with the Wind and King Kong, like one of these classic Hollywood studios.
Wow.
They had to knock out a wall between two sound stages. It was massive. And he knew that if they built one set, it was going to be expensive. But if they put 30 pages of the script, like the beginning and the finale, the two most important scenes, that would add a lot of production value. And you were only paying for one soundstage.
Yeah.
Genius.
It's brilliant.
Yeah,
and
really
so there were some smart people. Like the movie does not. Unfortunately, as much as I love the movie, I don't think it lives up to the quality of the people that were working on it, and that was due to budgetary constraints. That was due to time constraints. That was
and all of Skeletor's scenes. All of Skeletor's scenes are in that throne room.
Yeah, just
except when he's on the top of that building.
Yeah, when he's in his little.
He's in his little
Jabba slave
skiff.
barge thing,
the skiff,
like Peter or whatever.
There was the skiff. Of course, there are the soldiers of Skeletors that look like the the Imperial in the Death Star, the guys that fire the Death Star, those particular troopers, they were wearing that same type of helmet. So that was the second kind of shout out to the Star Wars universe. And then, of course, how Skeletor meets his demise at the end, just like Emperor Palpatine getting thrown down the shaft in his own throne room. I was like, come on, you're at least try.
Well,
at least try.
If I remember correctly, Austin, they ran out of money and were supposed to have this massive sword battle in the throne room because it's like 2 stories with all those statues.
Yeah.
So like there was supposed to be this big duel between He-Man and Skeletor that they just didn't have the money for. So they somehow managed to get like 2 or 3 days worth of reshoots to shoot like the last duel. Is that why like all the lighting is just
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct in that regard. Canon was basically on life support at this point. You can see it in certain movies, especially anything shot in early 1987 filming. They were running out of cash. And Master Universe is a movie where, every Monday, the union workers would show up on set and they hadn't been paid. And they would have to send a producer down to the Canon office to actually cut checks because that's what trouble they were in.
Wow.
So they got to the end of the shoot where literally they were given a deadline. It's like Friday night at midnight, there's going to be someone to pull the plug, like literally a plug. We're going to cut your power to the studio that you're shooting in. And so Canon had their goons there. Like that was the plan. And they wanted the movie to end because the last day of shooting would have been a lot of the stuff at the throne room at the end, the stuff in Skeletor and the awesome gold crazy costume and He-Man. But the movie would have ended where He-Man had his sword and Skeletor had his staff, and they would have the sword and the staff would have collided. Lightning and sparks would have flown, and the movie would have stopped, and it would have gone to credits.
What?
You wouldn't have seen the battle. That was the end. That was what Canon.
You're kidding
was
me.
Like, this is
that's how they were going to end it?
Because they didn't have money to keep filming. So like, this is the new ending. This is where we're going to stop. Like the whole movie builds up to this showdown. We're going to stop right here.
That's
so again, Gary Goddard was like, we can't do that. That's terrible. That's like the least satisfying way to end this movie. Dolph at this point, like, was fighting for like this was going to be the stepping stone to his career. Like he doesn't want it to end that way, and everybody who worked on it, like so many people that were working on this movie, didn't want to. So Canon were there at midnight, as they said, they pulled the plug. But Gary Goddard and several of the people had all spoken together. The actor who played Blade in the movie, who had the chainmail and the little wings on his head.
I've been waiting for this moment for a long time.
Yeah.
He's so he's holding the sword. Like he clearly fetishizes He-Man because he's like a super fan of He-Man in a weird way. It's very. Anyways, I'm sorry. It's just fangirl. It's hilarious.
He's famous for being like the kind of one of the like blade masters of Hollywood.
That's right. Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Not only that, but he and his wife have a ranch out in Los Angeles. If you guys ever want to have like a really cool vacation, I'm hoping like maybe my like 20th anniversary or something, my wife and I can go out and do this. But Anthony DeLongis runs a ranch, and it's like a Airbnb like type thing. But he trains a lot of Hollywood people to use weapons, and he trained Dolph Lundgren and swords in this. But famously, he's like the master of whips. Like Catwoman, Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns, he trained her on the whip. When Harrison Ford, he didn't do the whip stuff in the first Indiana Jones movies, but when he did it for Crystal Skull, he went and trained at Anthony DeLongis' ranch. So Blade is the whip guy in Hollywood.
Nice.
And
that's so awesome.
But in any case, so the end. So Canon pulled the plug. Most of the cast and crew went home. Gary Goddard talked to a very small skeleton crew, like a dozen people. Like he had a guy there running lights. He had a guy with the camera. He had Dolph. He had Anthony DeLongis, who was also the double for Skeletor during the fight scenes because he'd been training Dolph. He was the one fighting in the Skeletor makeup. And they stayed after everyone left, and they were sure the coast was clear. they from like 1 a.m. until like 6 a.m. they just improvised a fight scene with one of those color wheels. You ever see like the things that used to put on Christmas trees back in like the 50s and 60s?
Oh yeah.
And like a fog machine, and that's all they had. That's why the battle, when their swords collide, it suddenly goes dark and it's just like wonky colors. It looks like a weird like romantic ballad music video when they're having their fights.
Yeah. Strangely apropos, Austin, by the way. Can you know?
So his thought is that this is what we're going to show canon. Like I can't go back and have this be the ending. There has to be something that entices them to come back and keep shooting.
Yeah.
So they just spend the night, like all night, shooting this very bare bones scene, much of which is in the movie.
Yeah.
And they take it and they put the edit together and they show it to canon, and they're like, you need to give us, please, one day. Like, this fight looks cool. If we had 1 day worth of reshoots, we can fly Franklin Jello back from New York back to Los Angeles. We'll have Dolph here. We'll shoot a few pickups. We'll shoot the, him falling into the pit and things like that. That will finish the movie. We can. And so Canon was like hemmed and hawed, and they actually ended up having Gary Goddard, the director, foot the bill, like split the bill with them. So like for the day of shooting, like they paid for half of it, and the director himself paid for the other half of like everybody's wages for that one extra day of pickups that they had to finish the movie. It's like I forget what it was, but it cost him out of his like salary like $250,000 out of pocket too. But he believed hard enough that like the movie needed that. The movie wouldn't dumb if it ended with their swords colliding.
Totally.
Good for him, man. That's like serious integrity that he would. I mean, I get it. It's his name attached to it. You could be cynical about it, but I mean, how many directors? David Lynch didn't do that for Dune. David Lynch just was like, no, I don't like that movie. It's an Alan Smithy film now, But I didn't know that, man. That's awesome. That's a very admirable,
It's but it's one of those also things that's thinking. Like, he knew that they were going to pull the plug, that they wouldn't get the footage. And so he shot, he talked to everyone he needed to plan to sort of like hide out and pretend they, smoking cigarettes or whatever on set until everybody else went home, so they wouldn't get in trouble with like the union shoots and things like that.
That's so funny. As our dad was a non-union guy, so we really appreciate that. By the way, 33, one of the friends of the channel, 33 Branch, he made a great pun. He said it sounds a lot like they had a Skeletor crew.
Oh
yeah.
Hold on.
Nice. Oh, that's good. That's good.
No, God, please, no.
We got to pipe in some sound effects for that one from the from the stream deck.
That was good.
Let's see. Okay, I wanted to ask you. There are a bunch of different things I could ask you, and while I have time and I'm thinking about it, since we're talking about the end of the shoot. There's the post credits "I'll be back" scene with Skeletor. Did they ever really have any hopes of a sequel at all? Like, I mean, and why even film that? Is that like the canon model to like, hey, we'll fund what we have going by like promising you a Masters of the Universe 2? Is that like kind of what canon does?
I mean, Gabe's on the money there. That was, from my research and the best of my knowledge, that was the first like post-credits scene in any film to actually tease a sequel. You had it in like the Muppet movie where you'd have people come out and like say to go home and things like that, and all these different comedies that had been done before. But that was the first time that it was teasing what was next. Like, there was going to be something, and it was hopeful. Like, I think they were very hopeful. They knew everyone who worked on the movie was aware that the movie was not what they had necessarily set out to make. But Canon announced sequels to movies that had no business ever having sequels all the time. The movie, they got to the Cannes Film Festival in 1987, so like a few months before it premiered. It premiered a few months later in that summer, but they had a early screening of a slightly unfinished cut, And before that even debuted, Menachem Golan announced a sequel, the head of canon, to all of the press there. Dolph was done. Like, he was embarrassed by Master Universe at this point. He did not want, like, he realized that he kind of looked silly in it, and this was not like the movie he was going to build his career.
Sure.
He was just kind of hoping that he'd get a mulligan, get to start over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was sitting there at this like champagne brunch that Cannon hosted with all of the international press at the Cannes Film Festival, and yeah, Dolph kind of had to sit there and grit his teeth as Cannon announced we're doing another one. But they went forward with it, even though Dolph said no, and this movie flopped. It was not the success they wanted. They had the rights to a sequel, and they planned to move forward with it. So even by 1988, a year later, they're working on it, and we may have talked about this a little bit last time, but they also had the rights to Spider-Man at the time. That was one of the other big pop culture properties.
Oh, okay.
And so their plan going into 1988 was they had rented out Dino De Laurentiis' studio as Dune fans, but the one down in the Carolinas, and they had started building sets. They had the same director, Albert Pyun, who recently also just passed away, sadly enough. Like, since the last time we talked, I think he passed away in December, but known for so many movies: Nemesis, Cyborg, Dangerously Close, Down Twisted, Doll Man, like so many great like low budget 90s and 80s sci-fi films. They had plans that they were going to shoot both Spider-Man and Master Universe back to back, but not like one and then the other.
Yeah.
The plan was they're going to shoot Spider-Man, all of the Peter Parker stuff, like early on, like before he gets bitten by this radioactive spider.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 weeks of shooting Spider-Man, and then they're going to take a break, and they're going to spend 8 weeks shooting Master Universe 2, which they would have shot the whole film, and then come back and shot Spider-Man. And in the meantime, the Peter Parker actor was going to start lifting weights, start taking steroids, get on a training like regimen, so that when he came back 8 weeks later, that was how they were going to do the transformation. It wasn't going to be makeup or anything. It was just going to be like one like skinny stuntman like doing roids and exercising for 8 weeks, and that was canon. That was how they did things.
Mm-hmm.
But so Master Universe, interesting. Master Universe 2 was the other movie they were going to shoot, and Dolph was not involved. If you know the surfer, if you've ever heard of Laird Hamilton, or if you remember him as like kind of he was on I remember as a kid, like the late 80s, like he was on posters and things like that for like your radical surfers and things like that. Kind of a Tony Hawk type guy, but like years earlier.
Yep.
But he was cast as the new He-Man, and the whole story was that he was supposed to come back to Earth as He-Man, but he was going to be like hiding as like a high school like quarterback. It's goofy. It's like a whole goofy storyline that really has nothing to do with the first movie, but it ended up not happening. Like all the costumes from Master Universe got shipped to Carolina. All of these sets, because they were planning to shoot Spider-Man first, they had started building like these sort of like fake New York City streets. Those movies did not happen because Canon ran out of money. They talked to the director Albert Pyun and asked him what he could do with with basically to mitigate lost cost stuff, investments they'd already sunk into these costumes and things. And so he spent the weekend writing a movie, and it was a movie called Cyborg. Canon had this was right after like Bloodsport had come out, and they had signed a preemptive contract with Jean-Claude Van Damme for a second movie. So it's just one of these things that like we've got this studio space, we've got all this cast and crew already hired to make Spider-Man Cyborg, which we can't afford to do two movies. Spider-Man and He-Man 2, we can't afford to do two movies anymore. What can you do with the He-Man costumes and the Spider-Man sets and Jean-Claude Van Damme, because we have him and nothing to do with him? And the director, Albert Pyun, went and wrote this bonkers, wacky, low-budget sci-fi movie called Cyborg, and they shot it in that space with the same costumes, with the cast members. Like most of the people in that movie were all characters for the new He-Man movie that they'd already cast for that, and just
that's
they were stuck.
funny.
It's crazy. But if you watch Cyborg, if you're like browsing Amazon Prime or Tubi like at this weekend and you're looking for something to turn on, you've just watched Master Universe to prepare for tonight's show. Look at those costumes. Look at the bad guys' costumes in that,
Okay.
and see if they're not just costumes from Master Universe. Like the main bad guy wears Blade's
I was gonna
outfit. He's just dressed as Blade
Really?
from
That makes sense.
Master
That makes
Universe.
sense.
And then you have pieces of like Kargs. I think there's one of the cyborg ladies wears Tila's like kind of jumpsuit that she wears from it, because
Nice.
they had shipped it all out there planning to make He-Man too, and they didn't.
I hope they dry cleaned it.
I mean, that would have cost money. Canon would have done that.
I was telling Nick earlier, like, like in true canon fashion, having watched it now as a middle-aged man, in true canon fashion, all the chicks are babes in Masters of the Universe. Sorceress is a babe, Evil Lynn's a babe, Courtney Cox is in it, like whatever, but like her mom's a babe, like unnecessary. There's like unnecessary 80s hot babeitude that's
Even
going
Tila.
on. And Tila, yeah, and I like it how Tila's like response to everything is this is like her only character trait. She just pulls a gun. She shoots everything.
So do you remember what other movie, like what Tila's other big like 80s role was? The actress
No, Chelsea Fields
Chelsea.
looks familiar, but I can't place her.
She's done a lot of stuff since, but like what I know her from is Schwarzenegger Commando. She's the stewardess when he says, "Don't disturb my friend. He's dead tired."
Yes,
Like,
after he like
one of the best lines in any Schwarzenegger
Genius,
movie.
Austin.
Like she's the receiving end there.
that makes so much sense. Yeah. She almost steals the show. Evil Lynn and Skeletor. As Gabe was pointing out, like this really is like Skeletor the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And
For sure. I agree.
Scroll if you don't mind, Nick. Can you scroll back up? There was one comment that somebody had mentioned something that I want to make sure. I know Gabe. I'm telling you and Gabe got to get together.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah.
Gabe's
yeah,
channel
Was it Branch's
I
comment?
would buy this guy a drink.
Was it Branch's
He's
comment
got
when he
all the
says,
facts here.
He, him, man?
No,
Oh,
it
yeah,
was
that
it
was
was
great.
further up.
That was awesome.
It's funny that it's okay. I couldn't find it. It's funny that Dolph Lundgren was embarrassed by Masters of the Universe because on one hand, lucky him, no one saw it. So he's fine, But also, like, dude, like, you're making a He-Man movie. Like, what do you expect? You know what I mean? Like, I know that this is like Hamlet in Eternia,
Yeah.
Like I kind of get that, like that's kind of what Frank Langella brings to it, and I don't know if it's true in the He-Man canon, the lore of He-Man, but like I read when they were trying to redo the movie back like a decade ago, they were trying to make another Masters of the Universe movie, and Skeletor was going to be He-Man's uncle, so it basically was like Hamlet. He was like a sorcerer who delved too deeply into the dark arts and turned himself into a skeleton man, and like I don't know if so like obviously there's some legitimate stuff there, but at the end of the day, Dolph, dude, it's a toy movie. Like what do you expect, buddy? You know what I mean? But yeah, anyways, whatever. So okay, this is one of the biggest movies in the canon lexicon. It is also unfortunately one of the movies that probably largely contributed to or maybe it didn't, the death of canon films. What are some interesting things that you learned in doing research about this that are in your book, The Canon Film Guide, that most people may not know about? Or what is just something that you found incredibly interesting about Masters of the Universe in your research?
Something I was very impressed with, and something that I didn't exactly know going in, that this was... I get it. So many times you watch a bad movie or a movie that fails to meet expectations.
Thank you.
And you think that, oh, this is just... There are people involved in this that don't know what they're doing or something. And that's rarely the case. That's more often not the case. There are usually other mitigating factors involved, but this was a movie where everybody was working very hard on it, despite, like, in spite of the circumstances they were up against.
Mhm.
This is a movie that it's shocking that it works as well as it does, and I'm not saying it works fantastically,
Right.
but given what they were up against,
Yep.
with people pulling plugs, pulling money, not paying crew, like crew leaving while they were making it. I mean, just sitting down to be like, we've got the money for your movie. This is the $24 million budget movie that you budgeted. You've only got 16 to make it, and you've also only got like 8 weeks.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so this is, I was really impressed talking to, I mean, I think 6 or 7 people I interviewed in the book that were involved in some way on this film, and how hard everybody worked, and how much passion they had for it. Again, it's one of these movies that that it flopped, and that Dolph Lundgren doesn't like to talk about it so much.
Really?
And of course, he's the focal piece for who represents this movie, like, publicly.
Sure.
And so but that's something that's not just specific to Master Universe. That can be said about a lot of canon movies.
Sure.
Because a lot of their movies are B movies. They're silly movies, and it's easy to look at these movies and say, oh, the people making it didn't know what they were doing, or they were inexperienced, or things like that. And these were a lot of hardworking people working against circumstances that were, if there wasn't talent and there wasn't passion in it, you would have something that would be totally unwatchable. And few of these movies are unwatchable. Like, they're enjoyable for as silly as they are, and as
I couldn't stop watching Masters of the Universe as much as I've made snide comments about it. I was highly entertained.
It's not the He-Man movie I hoped it would be, based on the Drew Struzan cover art and my fandom of He-Man as a child.
Right.
But
Yep.
it's
it's the movie we
more
got.
successful than it has any budget, than it has any business being, based on its budget.
Yeah,
and
that's
time.
true. I'll give it that for sure.
There's
First time.
yeah, there's a funny moment in that movie. I was telling Nick about, there's actually a really sweet moment in that movie where Gwildor is telling David, David's like, oh, I'm just a high school musician or whatever. There's a million of me, and Gwildor gets all serious. He's like, there's only one of you, Kevin. There's only one of anybody, and it's this really sweet moment for the kids and everything. And then I think it's that same scene where David's trying to remember the song, the melody that for the cosmic key, and he's like, yeah, he's trying to remember it, and he can't. And the orchestral music,
that Bill Conti's orchestral background music to the scene.
But then when they cut to a wide angle shot, and the music is now like lo-fi, and he's like, man, I wish somebody would just shut that damn music off. And Tila pulls out her blaster,
and there's a speaker on the wall in an alley for some reason. There's a speaker,
and she blasts the speaker,
and all the music stops,
and the score stops. It's like this genius little, So that makes sense that you say that, Austin, about this really was kind of like a passion project, because you have these little moments in that movie where you write it off as just being like a dumb failed 80s He-Man movie, Well,
sometimes you don't kill your darlings. Sometimes you leave them in there.
Yeah.
So another person that deserves credit for this movie that I haven't mentioned yet tonight, but the editor, Ann Coates, she had won an Oscar. She edited Lawrence of Arabia.
Whoa.
No kidding.
That tells you the talent level. That you can look at her credit line, but that was her Oscar for Lawrence of Arabia. But
yeah.
Wow. So there's a weird sort of family tree between one of the quote unquote most greatest movies ever made and
Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
Oof. Big oof. Yeah. That's that kind of makes sense. Actually, I think that may have been the comment that so somebody had asked, it may have either been Gabe or the Branch, I'm not really sure, but somebody had asked if there's any chance of there ever being a director's cut. Was there any uncut footage from this movie that wound up on the editing room floor?
So yeah, I mean, all of like every canon movie, there was stuff cut.
Really?
But unfortunately, Canon was a company that did not spend money, and this feels terrible to say it as somebody who's like spent so much time studying them. But a dumpster was a cheaper than a storage unit.
Ooh.
So there are so many films where you can see stills taken like from sets and things like that, and stuff that they shot alternate takes, trailers. Like you watch the trailers for most of these movies, and they use different takes that aren't in the film, and you wish if this were a studio movie, that stuff would have been kept in a vault somewhere to be put on DVD extra features. Canon, I think they maybe had one closet for whatever, like 10 movies they were working on at the time. And when they needed to make another movie, they just took everything on the bottom shelf, pushed it out, took it to the dumpster out back. And
so it's in a landfill, basically,
yes,
outside of.
along with all the ET Atari cartridges. So
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I feel your pain on that because my favorite non-Star Wars movie, The 13th Warrior, is like that. I genuinely love that movie, and but it was one of those that Michael Crichton, the author of the source material, butchered in editing from like, I think John McTiernan's original cut was like 2.5 hours long, and Michael Crichton edited it down to an anemic, a skeletor 90 minutes, and it's and you can tell like that's probably the only fault of the movie is it's kind of butchered in editing. And so just like what you're talking about, so many people over the years were just crying for so many people, the 50 of us who love the 13th Warrior were crying for like
Jonathan was crying.
It was me. It was just me with 50 different Google accounts, for an unedited version or a director's cut or something, like what's John McTiernan's original vision for this awesome, because there are, just like what you're talking about, there are stills, there are parts of the trailer, and there are characters who, like, when they die, they're supposed to be important, but you're like, dude, I saw that guy in the background at the boat. Like, why is that guy's death suddenly important? And yeah, it's the same thing. Like, none of that footage has been preserved, and it just it's that Indiana Jones man thing. It belongs in a museum, you know.
Yeah, one of my, example of what Canon did and how little they kind of cared for keeping that sort of extra material. There's a movie, very little seen movie. I think you can probably watch the whole thing on YouTube if you wanted to, but it's called America 3000. And it's like a kind of a Mad Max style, like post-apocalyptic movie, like comedy. And the director had gone through and like the movie had, it's like rough soundtrack and everything. It had the wrong score in it and everything. It looks like a scratch score, and he had all the audio was not great. And he went through and redubbed things, add voiceover and things like that. He spent 2 months doing this in the like post in the editing suite with actors and things like that. And Canon mixed up the prints. So when he went to see the movie, when it played in theaters and when it came out on VHS, it was the original one that he had spent 2 months replacing. They had just, when they had the original one that he had shot and the one that he had redone, they had thrown away the wrong one.
Oh, baby.
And that's an example of like, that's why we're never going to find like extra Master Universe footage.
God bless.
Yeah.
It just, we need a cosmic key so that we can tap into some alternate dimension, fringe style, and gain access to like some alternate universe where this stuff exists.
Yeah. Well, speaking of alternate universe, I think the most satisfying thing about Masters of the Universe was that the detective stays an attorney.
Yeah, he's got the best.
I got a beautiful woman. I got a great view.
Look at me. Why would I go back? Clean air. I got great view.
Clean air was one of the things.
I got a beautiful woman.
Clean air.
Lubick's story arc is really,
very satisfying.
He's the real hero of Masters of the Universe.
Mm-hmm.
That almost makes you think like there could have been a whole script written from Lubick's perspective as like this detective trying to figure out this weird, chaotic.
Right. That's a book.
Yeah, right.
That's a book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. We're almost out of time, but this has been so incredibly gratifying.
Yeah, it's been fun to
This
catch
is
up with you.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to catch up with you guys. I've been looking forward to this. I mean, we talked about this at the end of the last time we chatted.
Oh, yeah, I know.
About doing another movie.
Yeah, dude. And
What's the next movie we gotta watch? What's the next canon film?
Yeah,
we
what's
should-
a recommend? Because we keyed this one up for you,
Yeah. Now I have kids now, so it needs to be one of
Oh,
those
gosh.
canon movies.
like a safe canon movie,
Yeah.
a kid friendly or
Yeah.
relatively kid
Relatively.
Yeah, I got to think on that. But how old are your kids? That's
13 and 11.
okay. Mine are 7 and 4, so they're still like not at a tier where I can safely watch almost any canon
What
movie.
would you watch with your 7 and 4-year-old? That's safe. I'll go with that.
Oh, I mean, this I would have watched with them.
Yeah.
Like that's up there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to think of that. I'm gonna have to think of that for a little while.
right.
Yeah,
Gabe's
but
in the
we can
comments
email
saying,
about it.
Bloodsport.
Oh, I mean, Bloodsport. Would
I'm
be
not watching
fun,
Bloodsport
but
with
not the
them.
kids.
Not
No,
with the
no,
kids.
no.
I've
a good
never
one.
seen.
But I mean, honestly, like Bloodsport's probably safer than a lot of kid film. At least anything with good old Chuck in it here. Like, I think
Yeah,
that's
Chuck Norris, yeah.
probably
Oh,
got less objectionable content than any of Chuck's movies.
well, you're a big Delta Force fan, if I remember correctly,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
So I would say either two good ones would be either Delta Force or Invasion USA.
I mean, Invasion USA is pretty darn wild.
Really?
That's yeah.
Is it more?
It's that so that I mean that's got a crazy backstory. It's just as wacky as Mass Universe, if not more.
Yeah.
But it's also a movie that results in just pure. I call it in the book Chuck magic because
I like
there's
that
no
too.
explanation on why he's like. I mean, that's a movie where, Chuck pulls his truck around a corner in Miami and suddenly he's in Atlanta stopping terrorists. And then he turns his car and suddenly he's down in like the Florida, like the deltas, like the swamps. And it's just like, it doesn't make any logical sense. But if you can check your brain out, it distills everything I like about like the wacky, like super over the top 80s Chuck action. Do you know a great movie though? That's totally kid friendly, but a great canon movie is Over the Top. If you
Oh,
haven't
the arm
watched
wrestling
that.
movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
we
Sylvester
go.
Stallone.
Yes.
That was a movie that Stallone wanted to make that because parents he's got all his Rambo toys out at your Kmart's and stuff back in the day.
Mhm.
People keep bringing up like, why are you selling like marketing? Like, why are you so popular with children? Like, why don't you make a movie that's appropriate
not
for
rated
families?
R for a child.
Right. And Over the Top was it, it's Sylvester Stallone traveling across the country, like reconnecting with his like estranged son through, by grifting people with arm wrestling.
That's a good one.
It's a great family movie. That's, oh man.
Okay.
Well, if you guys wanted to watch that, I would watch that with my kids and we can all report back on.
Oh man, and it's Sylvester Stallone.
What
It
are-
was Over the Top?
Yeah.
I have zero interest in Over the Top because I watched it when I was little, and I thought it was because he was a truck driver. I thought it was going to be like Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh,
Obviously, it's
Oh.
not.
I wish that is that a canon film?
No.
No, dang it.
No,
'Cause I
it's a great
love
movie,
that
but
movie
not
so
canon.
much.
It's a John Carpenter movie.
Oh, John Carpenter. Ah,
Correctly.
yeah, that makes sense.
But that might be a good reason for me to watch it again because I haven't. It's been
New
like
eyes. You watch
yeah,
it with new
probably
eyes.
30, 34
Well,
years.
That's how I
since
was
I've
with
seen
Masters
it.
of the Universe.
So yeah.
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 I mean, that's
Okay.
that's a great kid friendly if you're looking for something to watch with the children.
All right.
And give me an excuse to watch it with mine. I think mine were 2 years ago way too young to watch anything that wasn't Frozen with at the time I was writing about the
Oh
movie
my
for
gosh.
the second book.
You poor man. Awesome. Real trooper.
He's
Uh,
paid his
That's
dues.
love,
I've paid
isn't
my
it?
dues too. I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nothing says love like sitting through some of those kids' movies. So okay. All right. This is a game plan. Over
Yeah,
the top.
yeah,
And I promise you,
all
Austin, it won't be like 4 months before we can get together again.
Nah, we'll get together sooner than that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Austin Trunick. Canon Film Guide is the book, volumes 1 and 2. You're working on volume 3 currently. Is that correct?
I am plugging away still. Yeah.
Awesome. Where can people
It's
find
coming.
your books?
Amazon or if you're lucky enough to still have if you have a local bookstore, if you can still actually walk into a place that sells books,
Nice.
they can order it for you. And if if anybody is still paying for a
I'm gonna
roof
pull your book up
over
here.
top of book,
There's this book
that's
right
a
there, guys.
yep,
Scan the
that
code if you
is
need
that
it.
is the latest.
Awesome.
That's
And
volume 2,
thank you, guys.
85 through 87.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then Austin, do you remind me again? I'm sorry, you have a website as well that people can go to?
Yeah, it's canonfilmguide.com. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter
Cool.
nonstop. So if you search Canon Film Guide on either of those sites, you can find me, and I'm posting stuff about every one of Canon's crazy movies all the time on a daily basis. So, and if you have any questions, like I am happy to, answer stuff, plug away on there.
It is
I'm very reachable.
That's awesome. It is a hilarious and colorful adventure that you have chosen for yourself to go on, and we are so grateful for it. And our thing is take up the broken sword of your father and strike down the darkness. And like we talked about last time, we really we laugh about these things, we joke about them, we have fun with them, we poke fun at them, but truly what you're doing is right in line with that paternal legacy thing that we're all about here at the Goslings. So we actually greatly admire what you're doing and think it's really cool.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
You're keeping my childhood alive in a very unique way, which I really appreciate.
And we're passing this on to the next generation.
Yeah.
Well, you're passing it on in an awesome way because you get to pass on all those cool lunchboxes behind you to your kids. I mean, look, the collection is
Yeah, I hope they're interested.
Dude, that wall is probably worth more than my truck.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. There's something for these kids of mine.
Yeah, or that's your retirement if you need it.
Yeah.
A wedding, at least. It's a wedding.
This is what I sell and get the camper so that I can park it in my kid's driveway someday.
There you go. Good plan.
Be like cousin Ralph Quaid and
cousin Eddie. Cousin Eddie.
Yeah.
Snots.
That'll be me
roll
for my children.
Good for you. Good for you. Yes. Angle into that, Austin, because you only live once. So all right. Austin Trunick, Masters of the Universe, Canon Film Guide author extraordinaire of the colorful 80s retro nostalgia deep dive that we love to do here. You are mainlining our childhood. So you're doing the Lord's work, Austin Trunick. Thank you.
You have struck down the darkness tonight, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah. This has been awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. This has been blast.
We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah. Over the top.
Have a good night. Good night.
Hey, buddy. All right, everyone.
That was fun.
Yeah, dude. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you to Austin Trunick, author of the Canon Film Guide, volumes 1 and 2, and just a really fun, down-to-earth dude. Lots of fun to talk to. A wealth of information about everything cool from your childhood on the silver screen. If you grew up, if you're like a Gen Xer or like me, a proto millennial, dude, everything he talks about is stuff that it was such a glorious time. It's just such a beautiful.
When you pulled out the Knight Rider lunchbox, man.
I saw Nick's eyes light up.
I lost my
composure.
By the way.
Yeah.
I apologize to
I had
everyone.
there's the faint
really
whiff of urine in the air.
It was just 2 drops.
Yeah.
It was just 2 drops.
It's just a squirt. Yeah. Yeah. Austin knows how to bring the heat too, man. Like, dude, he's got all the cool knowledge.
Yeah.
You know? And and he knows about stuff that we weren't talking about. He also knows about the Heir to the Empire series by Timothy Zahn, and we were talking about Grand Admiral Thrawn and Star Wars and all that stuff. So Austin's cool in ways that you don't even know, baby. Yeah. Unless you interview him, and then you'll find out.
And you were saying they're making a series or a movie on that.
They so the rumor is in the Mandoverse that they are angling for an Heir to the Empire movie. So I don't know if it's going to be another 2 years or so, but they got the Ahsoka Tano show coming out. They got Mandalorian just wrapped up season 3, and they're referencing Thrawn a lot, and they got some other show that's coming out. I can't remember But yeah, I think they're gonna try and make an Heir to the Empire movie, and like you want to talk about something that's like 25 to 30 years too late. But you know what? Better late than never.
Well,
Maybe.
yeah, but to that point, Gabe says those books are real Star Wars. I mean, after
Yeah, they
after
are.
the movies,
Good
after
point.
Jedi, that's
the best Star Wars.
That was the best we had,
and it's still the best expanded
yeah.
universe stuff.
Yeah,
you know, or Legends as they call it.
No,
now,
I think most people. I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that's very true.
Oh, American Cars is here. What's up, man?
What up, man?
I'm sorry I didn't see. There was a message sent earlier, but I didn't get to it.
Yeah, glad you guys are here. I mean, I can't believe it's been an hour and a half we've been doing this stream.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Talking about one movie.
Talking about Masters of the Universe. Yeah.
It's awesome.
So if you enjoyed tonight's experience, you have got to check out Austin Trunick's books, The Canon Film Guide, Volume 1 and 2. Go to thecanonfilmguide.com and or just Google it, Canon Film Guide, Austin Trunick, and research his stuff, man. He is super cool. And he always has something fun and interesting to say. I love Oliver Harper's channel. I was telling you about this earlier. There's a great YouTube channel called Oliver Harper's, I don't know, movie reviews or something like that. But he reviews all the cool 80s movies and all the stuff you love. And he's got like a 45-minute video on Masters of the Universe, and I love it. And I've watched it several times. And I've been watching this movie for years. Austin still knows a ton of things that I have never heard of about this movie. So, most impressive.
Who do you think, for Grand Admiral Thrawn, who should they cast for that?
Mads Mikkelsen. I was thinking about this earlier today.
Oh, yes.
So if I remember correctly...
That's a good choice.
And if I remember correctly, it's because I think his brother voices Grand Admiral Thrawn or did the voice of Grand Admiral Thrawn on the Rebels TV show, the Rebels cartoon.
I bet he knows it too. I bet he's going to charge them up the yang.
Oh, yeah.
For that role.
Do it.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. So, and you know, I mean, everybody justifiably dogs on Star Wars, Disney Star Wars these days. And this is going to sound really weird coming from me because like I'm the negative Nancy guy. I'm the like, no, it has to be this way or we kill everything, you know. Everyone dies unless it's like this. But I'll be honest with you, like I love George Lucas. Those prequels were awful. And I get why. I get it, you know. But like Mandalorian, even Mandalorian at its worst is better than the prequels and the sequels at their best. And like the Book of Boba Fett, it's not bad. You know, like, dude, whatever. Kenobi stupid? Like Kenobi is like almost prequels level stupid.
It was a bit of a letdown.
Logic. But you know, like,
but it was better than the prequels and the sequels.
Yeah, it's Ewan McGregor.
Do you think what's worse, prequels or sequels? What's worse?
Sequels. I'll take the prequels over the sequels because I will take authentic George Lucas over woke Disney any day.
Okay, I'm with you on that.
Even though the production value, like, dude, the production value of the sequels, if you watch those movies,
9-day difference there.
With the mute button on, they're beautiful. They're very gratifying movies to watch. Yeah. I mean, even Solo. You know, I like.
Dude, I loved Solo.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, I liked Rogue One. I liked about Solo. Was
also known
cool.
as Star Wars: The Bosnia Edition. You know. But here's the thing: like, you have to understand, and Austin's probably in this generation too. Nick and I. So I was born in '83. I was born when Return of the Jedi came out. Nick is a few years older than me. I think Austin may be a few years or a couple years younger than me. If I remember correctly, I think Austin's maybe in his late 30s. But the thing is, like, we grew up in a time when there was no Star Wars.
Yeah.
My classmates in school had no idea what Star Wars was. Genuinely had never heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's hard to believe, but there is a lost generation when it comes to Star Wars. So, and then those Timothy Zahn books came out, the Heir to the Empire series, the first like new stuff, you know, set 3 to 5 years after Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And those books are
around
awesome.
90, around 1990, maybe,
yeah,
somewhere
90, 91, you know. Because I think
I was 12, 13. I was 13, I think.
I was in the
So
4th
good.
grade when Dark Force Rising came
Dark
out,
Force
which is the
Rising.
second book in the series,
Yeah.
and they still hold up.
Wait, what was the first one?
I think the first one was
Heir to the Empire. Yeah, Heir to the Empire.
Heir to the Empire,
Yep.
Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command.
Yep.
And
Last Command, yeah.
and dude, it's just awesome. The creation of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thrawn became such an intrinsic part of the Star Wars canon. They incorporated him into the special edition of TIE Fighter,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Great
he
game.
became one of the top 5 greatest games ever made. It was just revolutionary, right? We used to play it. Here's what dorks we are. We would select the TIE Bomber, and then Nick would fly, and I would man the keyboard with the weapon systems. It did not
I'm a pretty
work.
good pilot.
Yeah.
Pretty good
We
pilot.
tried to Top Gun it. You can't Top Gun it, by the way. It's stupid. So, yeah, Gabe's right. Thrawn and Mara Jade, So, anyways, yeah. Rabbit Trail, but Heir to the Empire movie coming out. If you haven't read those books, get those books. They're awesome. BBC, I think, did a full-fledged audio production of them back in the mid 90s. That was really, really good. It had sound effects, music, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's just good stuff.
Gabe says we should do a Star Wars episode together.
We should.
Totally, 100%.
Yeah.
We should absolutely do that.
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah, and I bet you, Austin's probably got a lot of cool info for that too.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, Austin needs a bunch of interviews, man. He is. I mean, I don't know how much time he has. Austin's got a life, but Austin is so much fun to talk to, and he knows so much. Obviously, Canon Film Guide is his sort of bread and butter. That's his wheelhouse. But dude, truly, like if Austin were here right now, probably should. Sorry, Austin. You could probably talk, for just as long about like all this Star Wars stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
And you love movie references.
I'm sorry.
You nerd out
I'm
so
sorry.
much, and you leave me way in the dust.
Again, it is the legend.
It's the legend.
That's what
But
I'm
I
here
love
for.
it. I know you enjoy it. I always enjoy reconnecting with my child, my 80s childhood.
Yeah. I got yelled at in the Mikados one time by a 30-year-old drunk whiskey tango lady because I was hanging out with my friends and I was talking about how like I love the 80s, and she was like, "How can you love the 80s? You like were just a baby in the 80s, And I was like, I was born in 83. You don't remember anything from the 80s, and and
Well, I
like,
do because I wasn't drunk out my rear end.
Right. Yeah. Favorite restaurant, Mikado's.
Mikado's so
Yeah.
good. Went there for your birthday.
Yeah, we did.
It's fun.
But I remember like feeling a little diminished because like you can't like say anything back. Now nowadays you can't, but back then you kind of couldn't. You just kind of had to let it go.
Yep.
But like, dude, even though I'm born in '83, I remember so much stuff.
Yeah.
I remember Delta Force on TV on Saturdays at my grandparents' house.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I rented Masters of the Universe probably once a quarter at least when I would go over to my grandparents' house as a kid.
Gabe says May the 4th. Oh, you know what? That's Star Wars Day. We're actually interviewing. That's the day we do Micah Turnbow, I think.
Oh, that's right.
Thursday.
Yeah, May the 4th. Yeah. Mike Turnbow.
If Micah Turnbow doesn't make it, then maybe we'll do that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Star Wars Day.
And we're going to schedule it with Austin over the top.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Over the top. All right. It's almost 10 o'clock. We got to get out of here. Nick's got to go to bed. He's about to turn into a pumpkin.
I'm like, what about Bob? What
Yeah.
about? Give me a bull. He's going to scream.
He's going to scream. Yeah.
Before we go, let's do our obligatories real quick.
Yes.
Let me get the chat off the screen here so we can see the subtitles. Here we go.
American Cars. That's an awesome comment. Sounds like your killer childhood, buddy. Yeah, nice.
All right, we got Lisa S. We're going to mention our patrons.
Yes.
Lisa S. is our Pressfield level patron. Very generous support. Couldn't do it without her. We really appreciate Lisa.
Yes, thank you, Lisa.
Hemingway level patrons. American Cars.
Yeah, Jody
A
S.
couple of Jody S. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad you're on the stream tonight. Thank you, American Cars.
Yeah,
Glad you were here.
good to see you, buddy.
And now for our plethora of Orwell level patrons.
You-
Are you ready for this?
Do you, Hefe, do
Here
you
we
know
go.
what a plethora is?
Play us out here.
Oh, yeah.
We're here to have a good time tonight.
Yeah.
You guys ready for this?
I had to keep it cool.
All right. We got Margaret D, Julie C, Ruta Lee, Susanna J, Bay, Joshua, Lenka, Lanya, Melissa, Vicky, Kelly, Marcia. Thank you guys. Those are our most recent Orwell level patrons. We appreciate their support. And
Yes, thank you.
moving on to the backbone of the channel right here. Jabber, Charmaine, Jerry, Marcia B, Joe, Cheryl, Chris Caps,
Yeah,
who's in the chat tonight, Karen B, Canine Training,
K9, yeah.
Mama Shaw,
Yeah, Mama
Cascadian Breeze, Gay Bella Music, who is, I think he was in the, was he in the chat?
I think I maybe saw a couple of comments
Maybe
from
a couple
Gabe
of comments.
in the chat.
Yeah.
Interesting fellow, has a new single that just dropped.
That's right.
Hot dropped on Gabriel Bello Music.
Go to Gabriel
YouTube
Bello.
channel.
Yeah, you got to go to Gabriel Bello Music, his YouTube channel. Brand new single out.
Yeah.
Jesus Deserves More Than 4 Chords. It's awesome. You got to check it out.
Yeah.
Very good. Also, Mike Fisher was in the chat tonight. Thank you, Mike. He was our.
He is the owner proprietor of Giordani Jovanovic Hair and Skincare Products.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Sponsor of the show.
Great friend.
Carol J, Jamie J, Sean E, Sunny, Michelle, Charlotte. We love you guys. Thank you so much for the support.
Thank you.
And if you want to be a patron, go over to patreon.com/the Goslings.
Yeah.
Multiple levels. We'd love your support there. And I think that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
We once again went way over time, but
It's
Austin is so much fun. It's hard
Worth it.
not to. Yeah. So, and we will get together with Austin again and do Over the Top.
Yep, that's
So-
right. And we'll see you guys on Sunday night
Yes. on Sunday night.
with our very special guest, Ron Moorhead.
Ron Moorhead.
Yeah.
The guy who is responsible for the Sierra Sounds.
That's right.
Bigfoot stuff.
Yep.
So Ron is super cool. He was a real sweetheart and a real cowboy gentleman in a lot of ways.
Yeah, very cool.
So we were
Very cool guy.
very honored. It'll be
Talk
a lot
about
of fun.
some weird stuff, man. It gets great.
That's right.
We're talking about all kinds of weird Bigfoot stuff. It's great. You're gonna love it.
Get weird on the Goslings.
Yeah.
We're just bubble bursting. All right, everybody. Thank you, Gabe. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Tricky. Thank you, America. Thank you, everybody in the chat. We really appreciate you guys. We hope you all have a great night. We will see you back here on Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And we hope you guys have a great rest of the week.
Yeah.
Until then, I'm Jonathan.
I'm Nick.
Go forth.
Strike down the darkness.
Strike it down, baby.